So everybody knows that the advertising industry can be ruthless. One of the dirtiest tricks is claiming that your product doesn't contain certain harmful ingredients, like, say, asbestos or lead, subtly implying that your competitors' products probably do. Sadly, this tactic is not new. Marcion Sinope used it centuries ago when he marketed this New Testament, this new Bible, as portraying a loving God rather than an angry, punishing God in what they call the Old Testament, the Torah. Try our new Bible, tyrant-free. This approach is shockingly wrong-headed. Rav Sadok Akwami Lublin, in Sitchat Tzadik, explains that anybody who thinks Hashem is punishing us out of anger is fundamentally mistaken. We cannot imagine how deeply Hashem loves us and how much He actively protects us from harm and suffering day in and day out. Yet we do still need clarity. What about the Torah passages describing harsh punishments and curses? It says, for example, Shehevi Rabim Makovim Larasha. So consider this mashal. Every child misunderstands their parents' discipline. They mistakenly believe that parents are moody and vengeful, controlling, or just harboring a bad character. Only later, particularly when becoming parents themselves, do they realize the truth. A parent's discipline is not driven by anger or wounded pride, but deep, boundless love and concern. So much so that it animates them. It makes them desperate for their child to be good, to thrive, and do well. When parents see their child making harmful choices, they aren't protecting their own honor. They're motivated by compassion, compelled by love, to guide their child away from danger. Even seemingly intrusive advice like, don't be friends with that person, or don't take that job, or don't move to that place, isn't a sign of mistrust or control, but a profound caring. If you want to see the purest expression of this idea, that the suffering that Hashem sends to us is from love, look at the case of the Surat, the leprosy. When Moshe read Parashat Negaim to the Jews, they became afraid. You know, if you speak Lashon Hara, you're going to get a spot, you're going to have to sit outside the camp. They were scared. So he reassured them, he said, Al tatiru. Even if, chas v'shalom, such sufferings come upon you, they will only be for a healing, like a mizbeach kapara, an altar of atonement. The truth is, she'Hashem yitbarach eina miyached shemo al hara'ah, ve'eina Hashem yitbarach sholech rak yisurin shel ava. Hashem does not associate His name with evil, and any suffering He sends us is always out of love. Nothing illustrates this better than the nega of Surat. This, famously, was a plague or a wound or a strike given to a person because he spoke Lashon Hara. Firstly, before I begin, I just want to note how delicate and loving Hashem is, that He did not want to put this on us. He didn't want to put it on our body straight away. He would first send a warning by putting it on the beams of our house, then on the couch, then it would go on our clothes, and then eventually, if we still didn't do teshuvah, it would go on our body. This gradual process itself shows that this isn't a punishment, right? It's a patient, gentle redirection. So, this nega, this sarat, as we said, and is famously known, was designed to wake us up to do teshuvah, so we would not speak Lashon Hara, which, as we know, is a very, very grave thing to do, which I'm not going to get into in this video. I've got other videos about it. Now, if you want to see exactly what Hashem was helping us with, we can go through it in detail because, believe it or not, they were not speaking malicious gossip. And I'll prove that in a minute. But what I just want to highlight is pay attention to how lofty a level our ancestors were in the Midbar, which will teach us a wonderful lesson about how we can be Yesharim, straight, righteous people today, and even highlight more deeply how loving the Sarat was. The Lubavitcher Rebbe makes a startling point on this. The pasuk says, Nega Sarat ki tihye ba'adam v'huva el haKohen. When a man has Sarat, he should be brought to the Kohen. The word for man in this pasuk is Adam. Now, as we know, there are 4 words for man in the Torah: Adam, Ish, Gever, and Enosh, in descending order of complementariness. Adam is the most elevated name of all, describing man as higher than angels. Adame, similar. Similar to who? Similar to God. Therefore, we learn from this that what were these men speaking in the wilderness? Certainly not malicious denigration of each other, or kafira, a heresy, chas v'shalom. What were they speaking then? Nothing much. And that's the point. Our holy ancestors in the Midbar were so elevated that their speech was, as the Rambam advises all upright people to speak, words of Torah and wisdom. What causes the sara'at to come? Empty words, silly talk. That's it. That's all it is. How do we make that transition from being innocent children who, okay, fine, do some silly talk, but I don't mean that's appropriate for their age. At some point, we make the transition into being an adult, and then at some point, we end up evil. Does that just happen? Does it just a switch flips? No, it happens in stages. And this is how it can happen to even holy adults. They start off with silly talk. The speech of the wicked starts off with silly talk, not evil talk, not evil intentions. In other words, at that point, there's nothing wrong with the person internally. It's the talk that is just silly. It's empty. They're saying nothing. Empty of content. You might say, talk for the sake of talk. Like people often say, we were just talking. We were just having a conversation. Don't take it so seriously. In other words, we were talking for the sake of talking. We weren't really expressing anything. Not an opinion, not an emotion. It was just talk. This is called lashon hara. This brings leprosy. Because look at what the Rambam says. It starts off completely innocent. It's just talk. It's just words that were not meant to hurt, not meant to be hurtful. But it deteriorates. When you get in the habit of just talking for the sake of talk, eventually you talk in a cynical way. You make a joke. And then everything becomes a joke. And then holy things become a joke. You make fun of good people and goodness itself. You're making fun of their goodness. Come on. This is so common. All of a sudden, the good kids are the nerds. The kids who won't behave are the losers and the wimps. How did this happen? How did you turn against goodness? Well, it doesn't start with that. It starts with careless talk. Talk for the sake of talk. And then it deteriorates. From there, you become cynical of the righteous, of good people. Then you start to doubt even the prophets. And then you start to doubt Hashem. Chas v'shalom. And all of this, as I said, comes from innocent, silly, harmless talk. This is exactly why Chazal are so against litzanot. We are witnessing the world getting consumed by cynicism, and we should treat it like a disease, like the disease that it is, the sarat, the nega that it is, a fatal disease that destroys our connection to kedusha and to wisdom. As we can see, the sarat was not a punishment, but a warning, which Hashem would heal us from. In fact, the proof is, look at us. We are indeed very cynical. We do speak lashon hara in a malicious way, and worse. So you'd expect that the whole world would be full of sarat. No, as Chazal teach us, we don't deserve sarat. Don't deserve a punishment? Clearly, it's not a punishment. It is a healing measure, one only given to people who could actually be healed by it. May He heal us soon. So this is why Moshe was reassuring us that everything that comes from Hashem is for our benefit. We shouldn't be afraid. For example, the pasuk says, if you keep my laws, I will not bring upon you the plagues that I sent upon Egypt. So does that mean Hashem's going to send us the plagues of Egypt? Even that, Rav Sadok says, is when it comes to us, the Jewish people, Hashem's children, it's only for our benefit. It's only to heal us. Even Gehazi, who was punished with an eternal sarat of Naaman, Rav Sadok proves it was only for his healing. Even in the Zohar, where it says that if a person doesn't have oneg on Shabbat, it will be turned into a nega, a rearrangement of the letters. Doesn't have pleasure on Shabbat, delight in Shabbat, then it will be turned into a punishment, and he'll be sent out of the camp, very reminiscent of the Sarat. Again, it's only for our healing. Every nega that Hashem sends is for our healing. It is out of love, and He does not associate His name with evil. I'll end on this chidah brought by Rav Ovadia Yosef on the Perek of Avot, Siag l'chochma shtika, a fence around wisdom is silence. After bringing the midrashim that say that we are like a barrel of honey filled with Torah and wisdom, every drop of water added to this barrel causes a drop of honey to come out. So too, every empty, idle word that we speak causes us to lose our Torah and our connection to wisdom and kedusha, chas v'shalom, like we've been saying. He then says, and this is the chidah, why does this Perek of Avot say a protective fence for wisdom is silence, instead of silence is a protective fence for wisdom, like the rest of the Mishnah? So he brings Rabbi Chaim Birsa Shapira, who explains that the other fences brought in the Mishnah require taking action, like making a vow or making tithes. But silence is refraining from action. So the point is, one can't always remain silent. There are times to be silent and there are times to speak. So wisdom must come first before silence. We must know when to speak and when to stop speaking. So I'll end there. Shabbat Shalom.